Grover Norquist is somebody I think we have to watch very closely. Frank Wolf, a couple of years ago, explained this in very eloquent form on the floor of the House of Representatives. I think he was also one of only 6 members of the House that did not sign his pledge to raise taxes under any conditions. I agree with Frank Wolf on that. I'm not saying that I would ever raise taxes, but never say never, because you don't know if there's going to be some type of an economic disaster in this country or a military disaster in this country. And I think it's important that we not go up there without having an open mind. Again, I wouldn't raise taxes, but I think it's dangerous to have somebody especially like Grover Norquist, that bullies people into signing an agreement. Our job is to represent the members of the district. We have to protect them no matter what it takes. So again, I wouldn't have signed that notice or that pledge.
What about his Muslim influences, the fact that he has meetings regularly with the Muslim Brotherhood?
Right, there's a question as to where some of his funds go to fund some of these terrorist groups.
And that he also sits on the board right here at Parental Rights, and it was told to me that it was an evangelical move as opposed to the fact that he also supports gay rights.
Right, and I agree that Frank Wolf said this is something that needs to be looked into, it needs to be investigated, and I agree with that 100%.
Rob Wasinger.
Thank you, Rachel. First, let me also thank you for all the great work you do for the pro-life movement in Virginia. You do a great job. I think, Grover has had past associations with Jack Abramoff and other people in various government scandals. I think when it comes, Barbara. I think some of this crony capitalism that is infiltrating the Republican Party really needs to be confronted head on. And I think some of the alliances that he's made in the past, the one you mentioned with the Brotherhood, is very, very troubling and deserves a lot of investigation. But there's other ones too. And I think some of the work for the gay rights community is also very troubling. I think what we need here is a conservative that can go out in the general and articulate a strong conservative message and not apologize. And but you raise a lot of good questions that need to be answered, I think. Thank you, Rachel.
Stephen Hollington.
Well, thank you for giving me a copy of Frank's new book. I've been a little busy the last week since you gave it to me and haven't read it yet. So I don't know enough about Grover's activities in that regard. I have told Grover that I can't sign his pledge, not quite for the reason that Mark mentions, but because it's not conservative enough. I had this conversation with him where I said, hey, no problem with the first half of the pledge, not raising taxes. I understand there's only 5 presidents ever who've ever cut taxes in the 101-year history of the income tax. And every single time it's been cut, revenues have dipped and then surged because the economy does better, brings in more to the government. So there's no good reason to raise taxes. The problem is a little bit in the second part where he says, you never do away with a deduction without getting a corresponding rate increase. Well, that's fine for big deductions where you can do that, but for a little deduction like, say, a solar panel deduction where you couldn't do that, I asked Grover, I said, would that violate your pledge? And he said, well, of course it would, but nobody would ever introduce such a bill. And I said, I'm running for Congress, so I will.
Howie Lind.
Great question. The Muslim Brotherhood, they pose a grave threat to this nation. They're already in here. They're infiltrated across the government, across the country. There's a book called Infiltration years ago written. But yes, Frank, after your book is great on that, on Grover, all his shenanigans, all his connections. And I go back to what I said earlier about when Frank and Diana West and Steve Coughlin came to my home last year and spoke on Sharia law. It was a very great effort. Steve Coughlin, I don't know if he's here today or not. That's a case in point of what we're facing right now with this, exactly your question. Stephen was a defense, he's a naval officer, naval intel reserve officer, a defense contractor, was in the Pentagon talking about this stuff. He was basically thrown out, literally thrown out, and his security clearance was taken away, just like I spoke of earlier. This is terrible. Our government from the top down is trying to silence any talk about Muslim Brotherhood effects of what's going on in our nation right now. Thank you.
And Bob Martin.
I authored a statute which set up the Virginia Commission on Immigration to look at all sides of this issue, legal, illegal, nice, bad, whatever. The appointees to this commission included an individual who was exceptionally hostile to the State of Israel and who had affiliations with the Muslim Brotherhood. Delegate Gilbert and I talked about this. brought this to the attention of Governor Kane. He asked him to leave the commission because I did not think this individual would be fair and unbiased. We had him replaced. That's my experience. When I see a threat, when I see something that I think is not fair, I will speak up. It doesn't matter who, what's going on, I will stand up for the values that we have from our Constitution, which come from our Creator.
Virginia, and that Grover Norquist is part of that situation.
I don't know about Grover, but I know that Muslim Brotherhood. I haven't read the book yet, but we got him off the commission because of his affiliations with the Muslim Brotherhood.
All right. We're only going to have time for a couple more questions, probably from the audience, because I know some people have to get out of here at 4 o'clock, and we're still going to need to do closing statements. But for closing statements.
Hello, my name is Jared Taylor, and I'm from Oakton. And until 1965, we had an immigration policy that ensured that most immigrants were from Europe. Now that changed in 1965, and now we have immigrants from all around the world. The largest number that have come now are Hispanics. And according to the Census Bureau, Hispanics are expected to be an outright majority in this country by about 2065. And they're looking forward to that, of course, increasing numbers and increasing influence. I'll get to a question. My question for you is, why is it considered good, healthy ethnic pride for them to look forward to the power that comes with the majority status, whereas it would be considered wrong and racist for whites to be concerned about an immigration policy that is reducing them to a minority?
We believe we could begin with you, Ralph.
Thanks, that was an easy question. I think America is a land of opportunity and freedom, and I think immigrants, many of whom come here legally and obeying the rule of law, should have all the benefits of our great country. I'm not really concerned about different groups, Hispanics having majority status, as long as everybody coming is following the law. We can't give exemptions to people that break the law and then give them an amnesty, and I'm absolutely opposed to amnesty of any sort. We need to secure the borders and take this step by step, and I think that's really the only way to tackle this problem.
Stephen Hollington.
I agree that our immigration policy should be colorblind.
You think it makes no difference where they come from?
No, I don't think it makes a difference where they come from. I think it makes a difference. It's a rule of law issue, right? If they follow the law, and we have plenty of laws that aren't being enforced on this issue and need to be enforced. When folks are arrested for other crimes and then not deported, that's a problem. But no, I think that our law should be colorblind. There's a reason that Lady Justice she wears a blindfold.
Howie Lynn.
Let's be brutally honest. Why hasn't the immigration system been fixed? Republicans, i.e. chambers of commerce, big business, they want cheap labor. Democrats want votes, so therefore there's no political will to fix this. This week I was knocking on doors in Sterling, knocked on the man's door, gave my little intro, and he shut the door and he came out and stood there for 15 minutes and chewing my ear off about the fact that he has been a small business owner for many, many years, landscaping business, but was basically shut down, put out of business because he was playing by the rules. He was bidding on all the contracts with legal people, as opposed to a lot of us competition that had illegals. He was outbid on all of them. He said he's pointing his finger at me. Nobody talks about it. Why don't anybody talk about that? That's a great point. I'll talk about it. But to your point, I'm colorblind. I'm not saying which segments should come here or not. But again, strong favorite. The strongest proponents of legal immigration are the people that came here playing by the rules. Thank you.
Bob Marshall.
In the 1970s, when both my wife and I worked for Congressman Bob Dornan, Kathy was a caseworker. She dealt with the INS. The rule at that time was you could come to the United States if you had a job, and you had to have relatives here to back you up in case you lost the job. I am more concerned, and I think we should return to that, I am more concerned about the values that are held by immigrants rather than the country of origin. If you can, believe that there's a God who is a creator who gives us rights, rights don't come from government. You can come from Nigeria, you can come from Bolivia, you could even come from the Soviet Union. We have immigrants from, well, it's not the Soviet Union anymore. You have to have the values rather than the geography or the individual racial background.
Well, but it is, it becomes a complex issue right at that point, doesn't it? 70% of 10% of the vote, and perhaps evolving, and George W. Bush had a much larger percentage of the Hispanic vote than succeeding Republican candidates. And also, you're dealing with a population coming from Latin America that is largely Christian, religious, family-oriented, work ethic. Well, and there's the rub. Let me see, I think we've got time for one more question before we get on to closing statements.
Chris, can we do 30-second responses and get too quick? Have them answer in 30 seconds.
I didn't get a chance to answer the last question.
30 seconds.
My apologies.
That's okay. I still think it's rigged. You know, again, I want to emphasize, as far as amnesty is concerned, I'm completely opposed to amnesty. I mentioned before about 3 million illegal immigrants being given amnesty back in 1986. If we were to do it today, the estimates are it would cost somewhere around $6.3 trillion it would cost this country if we did that. We also have an underground economy. We have to get this under control. We need to go back to basics because we have a $2 trillion underground economy that is destroying this country. It's robbing us of not only income that we need, it's also robbing us of jobs. So this is something that we need to make first order. Thank you.
And the last question from the audience.
Mark Sell from Leesburg, and I missed the early portion of this debate, so if my question is redundant, feel free to disregard it. But my question concerns the NSA and the surveillance state. Basically, would you support and sponsor legislation that would prohibit the federal government from conducting kind of and I say the federal government, not just the NSA, from conducting the kind of surveillance that the NSA has conducted, the mass gathering of data and all that stuff, without a warrant? Thank you.
And I believe we start with Steve Hollingshead.
Absolutely, yes. You know, the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution says that people have the right to be secure in their homes and, you know, their papers, their effects, and their persons, right? And so, hey, I used to run an enforcement agency in the United States government. I'm all for going after bad guys. You need to get a warrant. There's nothing wrong with pursuing criminals, but the whole idea that we can collect information on everybody in case someday we're going to need it. The way, you know, Obama's executive order, not only does the NSA track your phone calls, but now he ordered Homeland Security to use local traffic cameras to tap in and keep track of where your car has been. Now, why do they want to know that? I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, they need to get a warrant if we're going after bad guys. I absolutely would sponsor legislation to overrule those executive orders, but also just more broadly to say, if you're going after bad guys, great, get a warrant in a real court. Otherwise, don't collect the information.
Howie Lynn.
Great question, Mark, where we went. We did talk about that a little earlier, and I said yes, indeed, we need to rein in the NSA. I fully support Senator Rand Paul's lawsuit, which is being done by Ken Cuccinelli to violation of the Fourth Amendment against the U.S. government. So I'm fully in favor of that. Thank you.
Bob Marshall.
I did put a study in this year at the General Assembly that I didn't get it passed, but I was calling to the attention of my colleagues. We are a sovereign. The NSA has no right to take the phone records of a fellow sovereign. I thought there should have been a lawsuit at that time, but there wasn't. I got the law passed this year that says no tracking of your cell phone or your computer. I joined what we formed a privacy caucus in the General Assembly. One of the problems is that members of the Intelligence Oversight Committee in the House and Senate are subject to what would otherwise be known as blackmail in different circles. What am I talking about? They get about $3.7 million in donations from the corporations that have contracts with the NSA. Regularly, and I was up on the Hill in the early 70s working for a conservative Democrat, the FBI and some other intelligence agencies would go around to congressional offices with manila folders with information there. They'd place it on the desk. Nothing was said. Nothing was said at all. The congressman or the senator would turn the pages. They'd even be told that, well, you know, the FBI, we've collected information, we can't get rid of it. Underworld information about U.S. senators was there. Nothing was said. They became very docile. Nobody can blackmail me. I have a background, it's clean. I don't mind getting in fights.
I don't know where Marcel went, but the answer is yes, and I would take it a step further. It's not just NSA that's doing this to us. We have other, Federal Reserve through the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is the new agency that was created under the Dodd-Frank Act. And just about everybody in this room, if you have a mortgage, a credit card, a car payment, they have your personal information. This is not in the aggregate. This is individually. They know who your bank is that you have a credit card with. They know exactly what your spending limits are. They know exactly where you spend your money. This is scary, folks. This is the United States of America. We don't do this. This is not Russia. This is not a communist country. This is the United States. But this is what we're turning into because we have a president that wants everybody to like us. He criticized President Bush for the things that he did. President Bush, I think, followed the law, and even if he didn't, he's a Boy Scout compared to Barack Obama. Thank you.
Since you mentioned the Soviet Union, this isn't the Soviet Union. I don't know if you saw the piece in Washingtonian magazine profiling Jay Carney, the White House spokesman, at his home with the wife and kids and the Soviet propaganda posters. With the wife and kids and two Soviet propaganda posters. I kid you, I'm not making this up. The two Soviet propaganda posters, full-size posters on the walls in the kitchen while the kids are flipping eggs. I'm sorry, I digress. It's the brand new magazine. Yeah. Rob Bossinger.
Thank you. Yes, I'd absolutely sponsor, support legislation to get the NSA under control. I think, I agree with pretty much everybody up here. It's been a complete outrage to have the federal government spying on us in the way that they are. Rand Paul's doing a great job. I join with Congressman Justin Amash as well in his fight to protect our privacy. Thank you.
All right. And now it's time for closing statements by the candidates, and if you could keep it to a minute, it would be appreciated. I think I may just go down the line from the far end to here, starting with Mr. Stephen Hollingsted.
Well, thank you all for coming and spending time doing this today. You're here because you're leaders in the conservative movement. You folks are the key to victory. Now, which candidate up here has the best chance to beat lobbyist, green energy advocate Barbara Comstock on the 26th, and the best chance to beat Obamacare proponent John Faust on November 4th? He also loves the EPA. I think I'm that candidate because of my business experience, because of my experience fighting waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, and because of my experience teaching the Constitution of the United States. So please, go to my website, hollingshead.com, and sign up to volunteer. We've got a lot of momentum. We need your help making calls. So go there and do that, and then vote for me on April 26th, and together, we'll go across that river, and we'll stand up to the Washington establishment, to the career politicians of both parties, and to Barack Obama, and we'll make them stop. Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you all for being here on this beautiful weekend, sitting inside an auditorium like this. It's great you're all here. Conservatism, yes, it's strong in this country. We are demoralized sometimes, but not right now. I'll just end where I started, where what we have going on in this race right now is the absent chair there is the establishment candidate, all right? Which one of us can beat her? I believe that my race right now, the way we're positioned, taking her, not just her, but the whole establishment in Virginia and in Washington on Medicaid expansion in Richmond, which is part of Obamacare, and then calling her out in our Barack Obama vote in 2008, which why in the world would anybody, certainly in this room and beyond, vote for him? We don't know, but we're going to take her to task, and the challenge is there. So please, I'm the only military veteran in this race. National defense is very strong for me, but it's across the board, all these issues. please visit my website at howielin.com. I ask for your vote on April 26th. Thank you all very much.
Delegate Bob Marshall. Thank you, Chris. I win in Democrat districts. Barack Obama won my district by 11%. How do I do that? I can get bills passed that the ACLU and John Birch Society will both support. That's how I win. I've been outspent 4-1 at times. I do not compromise on moral issues. About 20 years ago, Bill Howe wanted me to cut a moral issue in half. I couldn't do it. I said, you can move a road here 100 feet, move it over there 200 feet, but I will not abandon moral issues. I'll focus them more narrowly, but I do not give up on them. I talked to Jim Gilmore in the late 1990s, urged him to appoint a Democrat delegate to a job so we could get to a tie position in the House of Delegates. He did appoint that guy. We did get to the tie position. The Democrats refused to seat our 3 members. I had the floor taken from me. We had planned a parliamentary filibuster. I was on the floor was taken from me, the Democrats recessed, they came back, the chairman said, we're not recognizing you. I said, you're not taking the floor from me. I said 150 times, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman. I started to say, objection, objection, objection. Within 3 minutes, every Republican stood up demanding that we stop this stealing right here. I eventually got, 3 days later, I can't see down there. I'm dyslexic. 3 days later, the Republican Party was resurrected. We had equal power, and from that time on, we've been in the ascendancy. Unfortunately, the Republicans are abandoning their principles. More time.
Mark Seff.
You didn't take my time, did it?
No.
Well, you know, we've all taken, well, actually I haven't. Most of them have taken a pot shot at Barbara here tonight. You know, this isn't about Barbara. This is about all of us, meaning you. This is about the future of our country. This is about the future of the United States Congress. As I said in my opening remarks, we have a lot of problems there. Everybody in this room, I guarantee, has said at one time or another, let's throw them all out. We've all said it. Everybody up here has said it. And we've said that for a reason. We keep sending the same type of people to Washington every 2 years. People that have been in state legislatures, people that have been in government. We keep sending the same type of people. We have to break the mold. We need to send somebody from Main Street, the people that have been the most affected, the middle class, by what's coming out of Washington. The added benefit that I have besides that is that I have 15 years of experience in Washington, a seat at the table, testifying before Congress, defending you, even on the local level in different states. I'm dyslexic as well. I'm reclaiming some of his time. I know. I have actually co-authored 2 state bills, 2 different, West Virginia and South Dakota, that have cut taxes for small business. I have sued the Federal Reserve Board myself because they were going after small business. I have already proven, you know, when you send somebody to Washington, you have to wonder what they're going to do when they get there. Is this person going to live up to what they promised us? You don't have to look that far with me because I've already been doing it for 15 years, and I promise you, and I've put it in writing, that I will continue to do it, and I will term limit myself so I don't become one of the career politicians in Washington. Thank you very much.
And Rob Lossinger.
Thank you. I'm starting to sound like a filibuster over here. Since 2010, we have elected a lot of new leadership all across this country. In fact, about 55% of the House Republican caucus have been elected in those cycles. That means we're on the cusp of really taking over the House and doing something meaningful, getting rid of Boehner, getting a real conservative end. And that's the choice that we have right now. We could go with a conservative or an establishment politician. We should be joining the revolution. It's happening all across the country. The people that I mentioned before, people like Rand Paul, fighting and protecting our privacy, Scott Walker, Tom Coburn, Justin Amash, Mark Meadows, Trey Gowdy. These guys are out there taking the fight, and we have a chance to put somebody in Congress that's going to join the ranks. So we all need to keep calm as we make this decision and join the revolution. Vote Lossinger on April 26th.
and gentlemen, that pretty much concludes our Republican congressional candidates debate for the 10th Virginia District. And I'm very envious. I live in the District of Columbia, and I'm represented by a non-voting delegate by the name of Eleanor Holmes Norton. At least she's non-voting. And you guys have a really great crop of people to choose from. I don't necessarily envy the decision, but I think you're going to be in good hands no matter which way it comes down, provided, of course, one of these gentlemen win the general election. Yeah, well, now we have guns and everything. Yeah, now we've got kind of a heavily restricted Second Amendment in the District of Columbia. But I want to thank the candidates, Rob Wasinger, Mark Sabat, Delegate Bob Marshall, Howie Lind, and Stephen Hollingshead for participating in this. And as I said, it's the most beautiful day we've had in about 8 months. So it's great that so many people showed up to participate in our sacred democratic process. And thank all of you, and somebody will see you all again on Election Day.
For a second. This is probably the most important piece of information that we have to share with you. You might want a pen. I have never in my life seen a more complicated voting process for you for this coming primary. So if you walk out of here and you don't listen to me, even if you want to, you might not be able to figure out how to vote. So this is how it's going to go. It's on a Saturday. It's on April 26th. It's only from 10 to 3. That's it. 10 to 3, Saturday, April 26th. You cannot vote where you normally vote. Do you know that? You cannot vote free where you normally vote. You're going to have to go to vagop10.org, which I tried 4 times yesterday, and it wouldn't even come up. So good luck with that.
Don't worry, it's at hollingshead.com.
These guys all have websites, and I'm sure they have active ones that actually work. And you'll have to put it and figure out what your precinct is, and then you have to figure out where your voting location is, but it is not where you normally go. Okay, you got all that? So what's the date? What time? All right. Okay, now the other thing is, that's not all. As if that weren't complicated enough, you have to print out a statement of intent and fill it out and take it with you. And then take a photo ID. Now
I was going to say, as long as you don't have a photo ID.
All right, so did you get all that seriously? You understand? The hurdles are amazing. I think somebody needs to look into that. New congressman, whoever you might be. All right, so that's it. I just want to say, someone else said this to me before I came up here. I wish all of you could serve. What a great group of candidates. Last but not least, Chris, you're marvelous, and we thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon.
And all of you have the voting information on your websites, right? So go to any one of the websites, whichever one is your favorite. And you'll have that there.
We have a brochure out here that's on there as well. If they want to pick one up today.
Okay, all right.
I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.